United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody mic'd up?
Yep.
Commissioner Boyce, you have a report for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick, I want to acknowledge in the audience we have Lucy Labonte, was a 12-year Curry County Commissioner. Thank you. Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'm glad you got that clarified for me, but welcome. Thanks for being here today. Mr. Chair, today the House made it official that the President has been impeached. I'm not sure where that takes our country, but not a good thing, so I'm very concerned about that. They voted, huh? Yeah, they voted this morning. Yeah. 10 o'clock Eastern time. Well, even if they haven't voted, we know that it's going to happen, right? So how that affects Oregon, Curry County, and us remains to be seen. Director Smelzer, if you're listening out there, the number to call in, 541-247-3207. Anyway, well-deserved. Have a wonderful holiday season. Mr. Chair, we're sitting at the Fallen Heroes number of 34, so that's a zero change. The ODD lost in the line of death in the line of duty. Firefighters is up 1 to 56, and line of duty deaths to police officers up to 121. So that's 4. And also, Commissioners' comments today, I'll have a report. I'm going to ask the board to consider a workshop, a full discussion review for perhaps a special taxing district. Yes, new taxing district consideration for law enforcement, public safety for Curry County. That's all I have now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, so it is, forgot to state the date, it is Wednesday, December 18th, and a little after 9. Do we have any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move that we...
Did we amend it to include, I was asked by Julie Schmelzer to amend it to include executive session. It's here. Good. Sorry,
Yeah,
it's
we already
here
put
on
it
the
in.
amendment. Thank you.
Okay, I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
All right.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, moving on to public comment. Lucy Labonte, good morning.
Good morning, and if I'm a little bit out of it, it's because I've been awake since 2:30 this morning, so I won't share all my thoughts with you, because some of them you probably don't want to hear.
Commissioner, would you pull that mic just a little?
Does this
Yeah,
mic
that
need
one.
to be over
Very,
here?
very good.
And
Thank you.
down. Okay, so actually I'm here because I'm a little concerned about what has happened at the event center. We've lost 2 very good women employees. I know that one of them did submit a letter of grievance, and first of all, thank you for not appointing me to the Fair Board. I actually am glad you didn't, because I can do a lot more research on what's going on over there as a public citizen, which I am. So, and I'm Lucy Labonte for the record. I forgot to say that. I'm supposed to say that too. Okay, so I'm learning that some of the Fair Board members may not have known that there was a letter filed with HR. And so my question to you guys today is, what is the county grievance procedure if a department head files a letter with HR? Does that just go to the liaison commissioner? Does that go to all commissioners? It's kind of different with the Fair Board because state law requires the county stay out of state board fair business, as you know. So, but yet the the fair manager was a county employee, so that kind of makes it a little different. So I would love to have an answer sometime to that question. What is the procedure if a grievance is filed?
Okay, I am the liaison for the fair, and I was not notified that there was a grievance filed because she was an employee of the county. That grievance would have been filed with Ms. Schmelzer.
It was actually filed, I believe, with Julie Swift, who's HR.
Right, but that, in other words, it was supposed to have gotten to Our protocol is that it goes to Ms. Schmelzer.
Okay, so the commissioners aren't informed that a grievance has been filed at all?
No, not until it gets through Director of Operations Schmelzer. Then once there's either a decision made from her and or she has questions, then she would bring it to the liaison and or the board.
Okay, so because the Fair Board is going to be meeting at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, I believe it's 10.
Yes, it's tomorrow morning at 10.
Yes.
I'll be there.
So
Is that Thursday?
it's going to be Friday.
Or Friday morning.
Okay.
Friday morning at 10.
Please, they already tried to schedule one and didn't read the procedures and the policy. I have a feeling there's some people over there not reading the fair policies because the procedure for filing public notice is right in there, and it wasn't followed to put the meeting yesterday, so they had to reschedule. So, yeah, they're going to do it Friday morning, so thank you so much. That's all I wanted to know that's the only thing I have a question on.
Commissioner Boyce?
Commissioner, how long did you serve as a board member on the fair?
I actually went in when I was a county commissioner because we did have a situation very similar, except we had a fair manager that was being paid full-time, and because the fair had come to the Board of Commissioners asking for a loan because they were broke from paying a full-time person, we put a commissioner on there, or we had a commissioner on there. Ralph Brown was serving, and then I asked to go ahead and go on there, and then that was about the time he resigned. I was very, very strong that we needed, because it was this time of year, and this is when they start the work to put on the county fair. I mean, they need to have personnel in there now working on the fair. So that's one reason, I think that's one reason some of us are a little nervous about what's happened. I noticed Ron Crook put an application in for the Fair Board. I was really surprised he did that. But anyway, at the time, we hired Ron Crook. And it took us, Ron Crook and the Fair Board, about 8 years to get the fair out of debt and in good shape. And last year, about this time, when I felt, hey, things are going really good there, I can walk away from this, I decided not to reapply. As you know, I did reapply, partially because I wanted to help the manager put on the fair and help get sponsors and so forth. But I was starting to get some concerns from some of the things she was telling me. So I really thought maybe I could help stop something bad from happening. And too late, but that's okay. As I said, as a citizen, I can talk to all the Fair Board members, not just one. I can talk to all of you individually. A Fair Board member cannot be coming in here talking to commissioners because they're a public official, and it has to be the entire Fair Board. It's right in the Fair Board policies. So there's a little problem going on, and I think they'll straighten it out. I don't think there's any bad people here. I don't believe in that. I always think everybody's got something to contribute, and there's all good people. So I'm going over my time, I'm sure.
You're fine. Thank you very much.
You didn't put the little timer
Well,
on.
your time was done, and then Commissioner asked a question, so that's...
Oh, okay.
But we really appreciate your service.
We didn't have timers and stuff when I was a
Council Huddle?
commissioner.
Thanks. So we generally don't discuss personnel matters in public meetings, and but I can tell you that there was, and I don't know if it's necessarily was a grievance, but we did receive correspondence from a fair director, and Julie Swift and myself processed that. And again, the fair has an intergovernmental agreement or a management agreement with the County Board of Commissioners, and it's basically the fair uses county legal and HR and to process these kind of things. So we followed the agreement, and as far as I know, it got resolved. And I don't know if you were at the executive session that the fair conducted, the Fair Board conducted their last meeting.
I wasn't allowed to be because I'm not a member. I'm only a liaison.
Okay. Well, then so be it. But again, as far as I know, the procedures are followed normally, but I would brief the board and the Fair Board on this in an exec session, not in a public meeting.
Yes, and I appreciate that. I understand that. I'm a little concerned because, well, I won't go any further, but I will say that the issue was not resolved, and some of the Fair Board members feel they could have resolved it if they had known things were as bad as they were. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you.
Because I don't want to brief it. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Barnes? Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Commissioners. Happy end to your first year. It's been a doozy of a ride.
I hope it's going to be a happy end.
It's been a doozy of a ride so far. I'll try to be nice, but I watched the afternoon session of the last meeting from home, and I got to tell you, I'm pretty highly incensed still a week later at some of the comments made by Commissioner Boyce about volunteers. If we don't pay them, we don't get any work out of them. How dare you, sir? You know, I spend hundreds, thousands of hours volunteering for different things. I have tons of product to show for the work that I've done. And how dare you suggest that because I'm not getting paid for it, that I'm not doing anything? You know, I'm highly offended by your blindness to making such a statement like that. You know, you had a chance, 3 times you said it. The third time you said it was your strong opinion and evidence backed it up that if we don't pay people, we don't get any work out of them. You know, how dare you? You know, that's just, there's people in this room volunteer their time. I donate hundreds of hours of my time every year over at the hatchery. You know, I released 80,000 fish last year over there. I have something to show for the work I'm doing. There's a difference between working and being productive. And while you may work an awful lot, your productivity, I doubt that. You know, Commissioner Gold came in here 2 years ago, 3 years ago. She said she was going to put a county administrator in, and she was going to control spending. She did what she set out to do. You know, she accomplished the goals that she set out. Commissioner Pash came in. He said he's going to revamp. First thing he wanted to do is revamp our fleet policy. He did that. We're saving money on that. We have all new cars. We'll turn them over, and they'll still be making money. You, sir, you know, I have a list of when you took office back in 2017 on January 31st, you published your Curry Recovery Program. The first goal on that list was to have $2 million in the bank by January 1st of 2020. It's December 15th, December 18th. You've spent close, by my rough calculations, you guys have spent about $1 million so far this year on new spending over last year. And that doesn't include road department, it doesn't include sheriff's department, it just includes county. Staff is going up. You just spent $300,000 last week for a new software program. You know, $20,000 for this person, $50,000 for that one. You guys are spending like sailors on shore leave. And, you know, I'll finish where I started. I'm offended by what you said, sir. And I really wish you would walk it back a whole lot further than you did.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner?
I did comment to Commissioner Gold on volunteers, and yes, I realize how that came out, and it is the issue of part-time commissioners and not pointing a finger at volunteers. And to the contrary, and if you followed through my comments afterwards when I complimented Commissioner Gold for her past volunteer work, all of us have spent a lot of time in this county volunteering and throughout the state. So I understand why you're offended. I'm not going to hold that against you because I think you're right. The way it came out was not how I meant it. And so all I can do is apologize to the public, and I'm doing that right now. And I did my very best to clarify what volunteers mean to this county. And I said, yeah, I use the term, they're golden to our county. So what else would you like from me? If you're going to blame me for the spending, though, Mr. Barnes, I think
I'm
we
not
could
blaming you for the spending. What
Okay.
I'd like from you, sir, is to think a little bit more before you just want to hear yourself speak, please, because that's what it seemed like you were doing. You know, and I'd like to hear you think a little bit more before the words come out of your mouth about the consequences of them. Thank you.
And I take that advice. And I am developing my listening skills. I hope you can too. Thank you.
Next, Nick Brandt. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. This is just a real quick one. Sorry, Nick Brandt, Brandt Media. Boy, I should know that by now. I've done enough of these. Nick Brandt, Brandt Media. I just wanted to say good morning. This will be Brandt Media's final meeting with y'all, but we're pretty excited for the future. Yesterday, we just completed installation of a new community bulletin board that will start being used, as well as all the equipment required on this side of the county.
Can you describe what the community bulletin board is going to be?
Sorry. It's just something for your new staff, Miranda, to use to fill the channel time. however you see fit. It's easier to program. It'll allow you to put up announcements and other things like that on the channel and on the live stream that you wouldn't normally be able to do. You may also even be able to use it here in the building. We also completed this side of the digital transmission upgrade. There's still another side to be done by charter. They're working on that in early January. To date, we've done 178 meetings over the last 3 years, and all of that is archived on the YouTube channel. I'm excited that this board decided to continue on with the work that we were doing, and I'm excited that the last 5 days or so I've been able to train Miranda to do as much of the work that we've been doing as possible. She's got a lot of work cut out for her, but I think she's going to do a great job. That's all I had to say. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Gold.
I just want to thank you for being willing to train Miranda. That wasn't necessary, and not all companies would do that. So I really appreciate that, and I think you appreciate the monetary difficulties that the county's in. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Commissioner Boyce?
Nick, it's been great to see you here the last couple of weeks. And I mentioned, I think it was the last meeting, that the work that former Commissioner Huxley did in finding your company and helping you refine the system we have here for the last 3.5 years, it's become a source of pride for this county, and I think a little bit of an envy from other rural counties, and maybe a benchmark that others can follow, and it's been a very good system. Thank you for your diligence and professionalism.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, next, council, we have to go into public hearing at 9:15, correct?
It's been noticed for 9:15. Usually you can't start it before then, so yes, we can go into public hearing now on the fees.
All right, so at this time, we are going to go into a public hearing to discuss department fee changes. Council?
Oh, thank you. Well, the department, we put out a advertisement for letting the public know we would have an opportunity for comment on our proposed fees. And the fees were published. They're in the agenda. They're there for the board to review.
Okay.
So, you know, that's kind of what they're there for, and you can open public comment if anyone wants to talk on any of those fees. Okay. Usually what I've seen in the past is each department will come and talk about the fees that they're proposing to discuss the differences and the reasons for them and those kind of things. So you might want to see if there's any departments here to discuss their fees and what page of the agenda they show up on, and then the public can comment on those.
Are there any departments here? Ms. Crocker?
Crockett.
Crockett. I'm sorry. I'm only on the first cup of coffee. Morning. Sorry.
That's all right. My name is Becky Crockett. I'm the planning director. I do have proposed fee changes for 2020 in your packet. I'm not sure what page they're on. It's A-4, proposed 2020 planning fees, if you can find that. We did not propose any fee changes for 2019. These fee changes for 2020, we've taken quite a bit of time to evaluate other county fees for planning and also evaluate what was going on here in Curry County. The proposed fees essentially increase some of the fees and decrease some of the fees. The increases are based on the amount of hours it takes us to do certain tasks and process certain applications. So where you see the red increase in fees, that typically would identify where it just takes us more time than what was allocated for doing that work. The decrease in fees are primarily focused on hardship. We have a decrease in fee from $1,500 to $500 for hardship medical case for somebody to live in a mobile home or an RV while they're having a medical hardship. We also decreased the fees for living in an RV during construction of a home. And again, that fee went from $1,500 as is proposed to $500. We also did a minor decrease in fees for major developments. So when you're coming in through the planning process and you're proposing multiple lot subdivisions, overall those fees have been decreased to try to facilitate working with a proposed developer to get development going in Curry County. And so far they've seemed to appreciate what we're trying to do in regards to giving them a little bit of a break. It's not much, but it's something. It's mostly a gesture. So with that, I'm available for questions. John?
Sorry, I have one question, Mr. Chair, if I could. So you have some fees, and I don't know if this question came up in the past, but you have, for instance, your fees are, if you're going to file an application to do a conditional use permit, it's this much and this kind of thing. And then we have, our procedures have appeals. And I don't know if you can look at your fee schedule, if you have it there in front of you.
I do.
But you have some fees where there's an appeal, I think, to the planning committee. So in our code, we have activities, and one of them is an application, and then we charge people fees to process the application. And then there's a decision, and then there can be an appeal of that decision. The director can decide an application, and an appeal from the director goes to the planning commission. And you have a fee in there for appeal, I think, to the planning commission, but then a planning commission decision can be appealed to the board. And I'm wondering if we have anywhere in there a fee for that.
We do. It's
You could go ahead.
Yeah.
I just didn't see it.
Well, an interesting situation. When the planning fees were adopted in 2018, there was an appeal fee of $500 to appeal an administrative decision to the Planning Commission, and that's not consistent with law. And that's why you'll see in here a reduction from $500 to $250, which is consistent with what state law requires. And in addition to that, if you appeal beyond the Planning Commission, then you can see that it's a $1,500 fee for appeal from the Planning Commission to the Board of Commissioners.
Good, okay, so that is in there. Thank you.
Yes.
Because the idea behind fees is that they are supposed to cover the costs of the county's functions there. And so that's why they're done, unless they're regulated by statute, which they do in the appeal. And the clerk has some fees that are regulated by statute too. They actually cap what we can charge. So thanks, Director Crockett, for answering that question.
The issue, I just might say, the issue of the $250 fee to appeal, which is dictated by statute, has been discussed extensively by the planning directors throughout the state of Oregon. And I believe Representative Brock Smith is going to try to take that up again legislatively to increase that fee, because certainly $250 does not even start to cover the cost of processing an appeal.
Commissioner Gold?
Just a quick question. Did you research what the other counties similar to ours were doing as far as fees before assigning fees here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We've talked to multiple counties. The one thing that struck me is that some counties have, for their hardship fee, they actually have a pot of money set aside to help pay that fee for some people. But that's not in here. We just reduced the fee from $1,500 to $500.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you have in front of you the conditional use group there? Going down, administrative conditional use is up to 2,000 from, so yeah, it's up 550 from 1449. Planning Commission up about 700. And there's some others. I mean, most of them seem really basic and reasonable, and you may have just explained one of these, I think. I don't know if I'm actually ready to vote on this today, because we're getting a little bit of pushback from the public on some of our other taxing district issues, and not fee changes, but just the absentee owner. So I think we're going to have to do a little work. So I would prefer, Mr. Chair, not to vote today and perhaps continue this. But back to our question, do you have that information in front of you, Director Crockett?
I do.
Okay. Conditional use, planning commission conditional use, that's pretty active, right? I mean, you get those fairly frequent.
What we get are application submittals requesting administrative review, requesting my review. If it's a controversial project, I will kick it forward to the Planning Commission.
Okay, so that takes your time, a lot of staff time. Yeah.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold?
The fee for people not living in their places is not part of this, correct?
Not living in, I'm
No,
not
it's
sure.
not.
Absentee registration.
No, that's not a part of this.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I wanted to
Yeah.
But we're not,
verify that.
this isn't something we're voting on today anyway. This is just.
You have the option of voting on it today.
We
The
do.
public hearing is required.
Okay.
Thank you, Council. Just one more, and then I'm satisfied, Director Crockett, if I may. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Lot line adjustments. That's not that common, is it? In a given year, a couple, maybe half a dozen?
Well, this year has been very active, and I think most people realize the real estate industry has been pretty active, and that is reflective of what happens downstairs. We estimated, in fact, I looked at the fee schedule. If it had been in place last year, we probably would have made an extra $25,000 in collection of fees by what's going on. Lot line adjustments, yeah, we get probably 5 a month. So, yes. Okay, but this year has been very different
Uncharacteristic.
than 2018. In 2018, we may have had 5 or 6 when I look at
For the whole year.
for the whole year.
All right. Thank you.
We obviously did a lot of work on this. Wow, thank you.
Any other department heads?
Josh Hopkins, Curry County Parks. I had one fee adjustment this year. We were removing our day use fee at our Boyce Cope County Park and instead replacing it with a $5 parking fee. Our day use fee was $2. Part of the reason we're making this switch is because a lot of counties are doing this. The idea is if we're only charging for parking and not charging for the day use, it'll bring our day use fee and our day use area back under recreational immunity, so that if there was some sort of event that happened out there, it would provide us an extra level of protection. More campgrounds and more park systems that switch over to this way of thinking, the more that type of argument has weight when we go forward with that.
All right, thank you. Do I have any public comment on this? Seeing none, public comment is closed and the public hearing is now closed. Do I have a motion?
I think there's been a lot of research done into this, so I move that we approve the new fee schedule.
Do I have a second? I'll second. Further
Sure.
comment?
Yeah, could I just have a little discussion if I could?
Sure.
Thanks. So there's a statute that says before a county imposes any tax, it must submit the tax to the voters. And if you remember, Commissioner Boyce is comparing this action today to action that was proposed at the last meeting, which was to establish the vacant ownership, absentee ownership registration fee in that program. So the idea of, and we heard in that that was an illegal tax. So the idea of fees is it's to cover our actual costs of performing the service. And so there's a big, it's kind of one of these how many angels can dance on the head of a pin kind of arguments. What's the difference between a fee and a tax? And the idea of a tax is that if its sole function is just to raise revenue, then it's a tax, but if a fee is to charge for a service provided. And so that's the argument that people are making in that rental registration. I didn't hear that argument made today. We had people come up and oppose that and say that in that one. I hadn't seen that today, but I had seen there's one fee on here. So for instance, we just heard from the planning director, we charge these fees because it requires a lot of work to do an appeal, it requires a lot of work to process an application, but there's one fee on here and it's the fees that are proposed for the subdivision or the plat, creation of a new lot. And I'm not sure exactly, it's near the end of the fee schedule. And it says it's to basically it's to essentially, it looks like it's to fund code enforcement and sheriff's department in some way. and based on the impacts of the new development. And so on that one, there could be an argument that that's different from just the fee to charge for services, because the Sheriff's Department and code enforcement, they don't, for instance, like in the planning department or even in a plating, the surveyor comes up and looks at the thing and he charges his time for reviewing it and approving it and sending it back, and that's the fee. In the planning division, they get the application, they review it, approve it, they charge their time, that's the fee. In this plat thing, code enforcement isn't looking at that and charging their time for it, it's just creating some future pot of money to go to those programs. So just on that one alone is the only one that I have a question of whether it's a fee or a tax. The board can adopt it. I just want you to know that it could be subject to a challenge. So that's really just the only wrinkle that I saw. I don't know, Director Crockett?
One second. I have looked at this as well, and the law on this. And a lot of what the Sheriff's Department does and code enforcement is they look at how many people are going to be moving into that subdivision as it is described here. And are they going to need to hire another? In other words, will this have an impact on the county? Are they going to need to hire another officer? Is code enforcement, going to have a different strategy in that development versus the normal strategy that they keep now? And I think that's where the fees are going to be charged on this, not for, for a future pot of money.
Okay, well,
That's how I read the code on this. I don't know. Ms.
Well, I just give you some reference. If you look on page A-5 at the bottom, that's where this fee is identified. It's identified as a development charge on the surveyor fees. So it's not a part of the planning fees, it's part of the surveyor fees.
No, I was comparing them to the planning fees, this is under the surveyor fees. So again, like I said, it's just a word of caution going forward. This could be subject to a challenge. I don't know how it would come out, but I'm just presenting the two sides of.
I understand.
I just want you to make an informed decision.
Yeah. I just want to say, just to clarify, my comment was, I've been involved in the growth of a few developments and how they happened. And like you said, planning has to sign off on it. Different departments have to sign off on this. And as well, the Sheriff's Department has to sign off. Yes, I can, with my current force, be able to protect the public in that new development. Code enforcement has to sign off saying, yes, I have the wherewithal of my current staff to be able to verify that the codes in the new development are kept up to date. So they all have to sign off on a lot of these before building can go forward. And that's just my experience. I don't know that that's the case here. So, all right, with that said, any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
No, I need more time, thank you.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried 2-1.
All right, next we're going to move on to 5 consent agenda. To appoint 2 safety committee members, to approve the roadmaster request for board approval of task order number 16 for county contract engineer Dyer Partnership to engineer a Curry County Road Department 6-year road capital improvement plan, and to approve the 5th amendment of the community facilities sublease.
I move that we present or approve the consent agenda as written.
Do I have a second?
Second, Chair Pash.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
I caught that out of turn there, JJ. All right, next we're going to move to 6A. Basically, that is my annual trip to Washington for NACO. This year we will be meeting, actually there are some new legislation currently happening right now for veterans. Baldwin, Sullivan, Daines, and Tester have introduced a bipartisan bill to produce some $50 million for veterans and suicide. These are things that NACO is working hard on to get pushed through. And again, it's our National Association of Counties conference. I have agreed to pay my airfare and all my per diem daily daily costs. The only thing I'm asking the board to do is approve, because it's an out-of-state travel, my hotel and Uber fees, I guess, for running around Washington. I will be there 5 days, and I wanted to get this in front of the board so early because I was online the other day, and hotel fees right now are about 60% of what we paid last year by booking very early. So I can save money by booking it this early, and I do intend on going, so I'd like to get it booked early.
I move that we approve Commissioner Pasha's travel to Washington, D.C.
Do I have a second?
Question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Discussion. I appreciate your paying for your airfare very much, and the work you're doing for veterans is very noteworthy. Just to put in perspective, that 2000 for 2017 and 18 would have been almost half of our total travel budget. I know we've corrected that, and I'm certainly in full agreement with that. You said, oh, by the way, Uber doesn't work as good as you thought, at least did for me on a rainy day. It was actually a little expensive, but I'm going to get some of that back. My travel, 24 hours, was under 600. It will be under 600. So yes, 2,000 is a pretty big chunk of money. I'm going to be looking down the road and encourage the board to consider really cutting travel, primarily lodging for some of our departments. And I'm not saying that's getting out of hand, but I'm a little bit concerned about the overall amount that the county's paying towards that, and what that benefits our county. So based on that, that's down the road. I will second the motion, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, further comment? I have a little bit of further comment. I think our budget for the year is $15,000. I believe I've only used about 600 of that for the entire year. I do usually always pay for my own travel, even locally in the county, and into a couple of trips up to Salem. I've always paid for my own. I do kind of feel that this is something that we did ask NACO to help pay for, and they have. So I, being elected or appointed as a vice chair, I feel it's imperative that I'm at this, and I appreciate the board's first motion and second. So I will call for roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously. You're seeing Senator Baldwin.
Good work.
Okay, just give me 1 second here. I'm trying to. Next, we have 6B, ordinance establishing the CARES, Curry Amateur Radio Emergency Services Committee. Thank you. Mr. Dummeyer.
Good morning. For the record, Jeremy Dummeyer, Curry County Emergency Manager. Before you, Council's just passed out the revised article, the Exhibit A for this ordinance. So in Curry County, and I've brought with me Andy Gagliardo, who has quite a wealth of information and knowledge when it comes to amateur radio operation. In Curry County, we do not have a standing ARES or RACES group, essentially a group of amateur radio operators that would work in unison with emergency management when we need communications. This was a major deficit during the Checo Bar Fire. When the EOC was activated and operating, we did not have any local resource in the EOC to staff the radio communications. So there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of work towards, are we going to be able to do a ARES or RACES group here in Curry County following those guidelines? And unfortunately, there's a lot of history with that. Not all counties in Oregon use ARES or RACES. Clatsop County and Lincoln County are two that do not. This model that we're forming is very similar to theirs. So I'd like to bring up Andy Gagliardo to kind of speak a little bit on the purpose and why we're forming this particular committee.
Commission, good morning. Andrew Gagliardo from Brookings, for the record. Just want to do a little background so you know who I am. Basically, 17 years with Clark County. I was a radio microwave guy for Clark County in Las Vegas. I was the go-to guy for all emergency management in Las Vegas. 13 years with Nevada Task Force 1, FEMA, multiple deployments, 911 Katrina. I was the comm specialist for FEMA. 2 years with the State of Nevada Department of Public Safety, Division of Emergency Management, Homeland Security. Again, I was the statewide interoperability coordinator for all 17 counties, 27 Indian tribes. Fire, EMS, law enforcement, anything with radio communications, that's what I did for the governor. Presently, right now, I am a volunteer for Harbor Fire. I am the firefighter communications officer, and I'm also the vice president of the Pelican Bay Amateur Radio Club. What I have learned in my career, ham radio works when all IP devices do not, cell phones, computers, tablets, landlines, etc. I could talk to you for hours on the subject. We know what happens here. We just had a storm recently. We had things work. We had a lot of stuff did not work, including IP, Spectrum, Verizon didn't work, Frontier lost a lot of their landlines. I can talk to you for hours on comms that did not work versus comms that did work. Ham radio did work. We formed a net immediately, and we were able to start talking, passing health and welfare on the ham radios throughout Curry County. ARES. What is ARES? Amateur Radio Emergency Service. That's what ARES stands for. RACES is Radio Amateur Communications Emergency Services. Works when done right, and I have to specify that. Works when done right. At the federal level, FEMA, state level, emergency management, or at the local level, city, county, under emergency management. Curry County ham clubs. Curry County right now has 3 ham clubs. You have the Port Orford Ham Club, you have Gold Beach, which is doing a reorg right now, and the biggest one is the Pelican Bay Amateur Radio Club out of Brookings. They're at least 45 members strong right now. A lot of people do not know this. We have a resource, guys, a volunteer resource that loves to play radio. All need, this is the big one, this is where this all kind of comes together, all need guidance and training. By forming a Curry County Amateur Radio Emergency Services group to support emergency communications when needed, we could unite these groups. We're not trying to dissolve any ham radio groups here. So for the record, we're not dissolving any ham radio groups. We love these guys. We love what they do. We need to get them uniformed, that they understand what ICS is, NIMS, if they're called to the EOC, if they're called to the ICP. Okay, so let's, I'm going to go back a little bit, getting ahead of myself. We can unite these groups, work together, better train them, and support our community in the time of need under the direction of county emergency management. Does this exist now in other states and counties and cities? The answer is yes. State of Nevada, I'm going to reference Nevada because I'm out of Nevada. State of Nevada Division of Emergency Management, strong supporter of ARES RACES. Strong team in Las Vegas under Clark County Emergency Management. Right now, Clark County Emergency Management in Las Vegas has about 300 members that have been background checked, scope, NCIC. They have been trained. They know that if they are called to the Emergency Operations Center, how to work the public safety radio and the ham radio equipment when needed. Unbelievable. I mean, this is good stuff here. You're talking about not paying a dispatcher to come into your EOC and leave his or her job at a dispatch. Somebody who's going to come there, who's trained, that's going to pass your radio traffic so your fire, EMS, and your law enforcement can do the job at hand that they need to. What Curry County brings to this team of volunteer radio communications? 1, structure. We need structure right now, big time. Guidance, training, incident command system, NIMS. Being able to support a call out to support comms in an emergency operations center or an incident command post, ICP. In closing, I hope County Commission adopts this and lets County Emergency Management move forward in forming this volunteer communications group. Again, I could talk offline if you guys want. I could talk about this for hours. I love this. This is what I do. I've had a great career with emergency management, public safety communications, and fire. I'm a lucky one. I was able to take all 3 and make a great career. I'm semi-retired now, living in Brookings. And we could talk about the Checo fire, what worked on comms and what didn't, and where did we miss the point that we should have actually, we could do better. I think this is a great start to make it work better. that if we have something like this come up again, or if we need this group to pass communications, we know we have problems with the radio system, public safety here. We know we have problems with the county's microwave. We have issues. These guys love to pass radio. They love to talk radio. They, during the Chetco fire, we had ham operators on the backside of a lot of these mountaintops that refused to leave because they wanted to pass radio traffic. Problem, nobody was at the EOC to get that information that, hey, I still have people here. We're trying to move horses out of these areas back in Carpenterville. We had hams back there that were like, what do we do? I got information. I got my radio here, but who do I pass it to? Thanks for your time. Any questions?
Stay right there a minute, please. Commissioner
Discussion
Gold,
time.
you had your hand up first.
Either way.
I think this is a great idea, and the reason I think it's a great idea is we are scheduled to have a big event. I shouldn't say scheduled. It's not an if, it's a when. And I think being prepared, I'm a huge believer in being prepared, and getting this, all of the groups coordinated and trained, I can think of nothing but positive coming out of that. So, thank you.
Commissioner Boyce?
Were you next, sir?
No, go ahead.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
How many active firefighters do we have at Harbor right now?
Active right now, I'm going to say between 9 and 12 active. We were able to get all 17 actually back after they walked out. We are down to 2 people right now that are back and forth as far as who's going to be our new fire chief. So we're pretty close to getting a new fire chief right now.
Good. That was my next question, so I'm very anxious to hear on that. So somebody's pulling that whole unit together down there even without a fire chief, and so that is really good news, and that was a big concern for a lot of us. Thanks for your activity, and welcome to Curry County, and I want to go back 2.5 years of the Chetco Bar Fire, your work there. I mean, you were there every day and contributing and certainly made a difference. So that's all I have. I'm very enthused about this proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I am also excited about ham radios. I think, coming from the generation, actually years and decades ago, ham radios were a lot of the way America communicated with each other. A couple of questions I have, and these come from, some of these come from Dick Tylock, who you probably know very well. Is the EOC now under the control of the military?
Not to my knowledge.
Because from what I'm being told, they were told to stand down and that the Army Guard would take over?
No, the EOC is a city function.
Yeah.
Right.
County, yeah.
No, it's a city function.
Well,
We have
I know what you mean.
authorization to use it.
Got it.
But there is a little
It's not
confusion
a-
here. It's a good question.
That's what I'm saying. There's
Yeah.
some confusion on this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and-
it's not a military function.
Okay, well, I just want to let you know that I'm being told that it is, and Brigadier General Michael Caldwell is in charge of it.
No, sir.
And this may be something that we just might want to look into. I also wanted to ask, because I've been looking at some of the, the guidelines on emergency services, and from what I understand, the sheriff is the incident commander usually in the county, and then
Typically,
one
most
commissioner is with him on those decisions. Is that what as I understand it?
A liaison commissioner is briefed on a activation.
Okay.
I think usually the chair.
Okay. Basically, what I'd like to know is that we're all on the same page, that we have guidelines set up. I think it's important that if we have another big event in this county, or when we have one, that we have protocols, we have guidelines that are set up, and I'm thrilled to be in, to be involved in ham radios and emergency management part of this. I just want to make sure that we have all the planning in place. Some of the stories that I've been read into, people were hollering on the ham radios without identifying, so it caused a lot of confusion, and it caused a lot of resources to go out to different parts of the county that weren't necessarily necessary. So I just hope that as we put this together, it can be very organized and have a list of, this is what happens if this happens, if this happens, if this happens, this is the protocol for doing that.
Correct.
And that just, it gives this board member a lot of comfort.
Well, and that's part of this here is identifying the training that's necessary for these members that will be called up in emergencies, that they actually have the NIMS and ICS training. Much like here in the county, we need to improve our NIMS and ICS capabilities, and I've actually gotten approved to go to Alabama for specific training for myself so that I can teach that here and give you as commissioners and us as county staff the ICS 300, 400, which is a response course as far as what's expected, and of course the 402 class for elected officials, what's expected in a disaster, how to operate.
One follow-up on that is, I understand also that a certain amount of our county employees, commissioners, department heads also have to be tested and graded through emergency management. And is that all up to date right now? Because I was told that it's not.
It's not. It's nowhere close, and I'm working on a policy for the county. For the past several years, for most of the years, if you will, emergency management has been under the sheriff's office. And by being under the sheriff's office, we, the royal we, would check off that we were NIMS compliant because the sheriff's office was NIMS compliant, and that's where we were branched in. Under the Board of Commissioners, we are not NIMS compliant. Now, how we pass that is who all is going to respond in an incident. In this case, it's me. So I can say that I'm NIMS compliant, but as a county, we're not. We do have some people that are. I know the Roadmaster has some of the 100, 200, 700, 800 courses. I know that our code enforcement officer has a lot of ICS NIMS training, but we don't have a policy on that for the county.
Are the 3 and 4 and 7 and 800 compliances, those have to be done by a board member as well and some department heads? Am I correct on that?
So the 1, 2, 7, 800 are all online courses. Those are your basic level courses. And I am going to recommend a policy that those be done by all county employees. The 3 and 400 are those that are going to respond to an incident. The 402 is the elected officials course, and that's a half day.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, but
That's
I
okay.
just want to continue on with this just a little bit. If you would, make sure when you set this up, I would appreciate it if you make that very clear who should be, so that, again, if we have an event, we know that Commissioner Boyce is going to be staged here, and this is what his job will be. I'm going to be staged there, and that would what my job would be, et cetera, so that we have protocols in line.
Yes.
That the public knows these people are going to be here to do this job for us.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold?
I just have one question about the present groups. Are you having any resistance to combining the groups, or are they all for it, or?
You want me to take it?
Just real quick, the only resistance I've seen with the groups is using the Aries or RACES model. That's about it. As far as working together, they all seem to work together fairly well.
So, doing a little history on this, and this is where I'm going to use Josephine County as an example, Search and Rescue Sheriff's Department. They had some heartburn with Aries is actually under FEMA. They require a task book, a write-off, a lot of training, a lot of requirements. And Josephine County decided that we are not going to do it this way because most of our volunteers are elderly, they're retired, and they're not going to spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week meeting all these requirements, including a task book. Why don't we write our own? And we will not use the Aries, but we'll put letters in the front or letters in the back to identify that this is the Amateur Radio Emergency Services Group that is supported by Josephine County Sheriff's Department Search and Rescue. They wrote their criteria. It looks awesome. They've had excellent luck with this. I have seen this with all the states, including the state of Oregon. So the Aries itself, if you want to be strictly Aries in Curry County, there has been some history back in the day that they don't want to do it here. They don't want to follow that 100% FEMA guideline because it's a lot of work. You're asking for a lot of stuff for a volunteer. By doing it this way, we can hit them with the basic stuff. If we're activated in the EOC, I expect you to have the 100 done. The basic stuff, I want to run through the Sheriff's Department a background on you. You come in here, I don't want anything on Facebook or YouTube. I want to know that you know how to use the public safety radio and the ham radio. You're going to be professional, and we're not going to hear CB radio talk. I want you to be professional. That's what you guys do. Your job is to listen for the information, whether you pass it to the incident commander on a computer, WebEOC, or whatever device you want to use, so they can do their job and make the decisions. That's great. It has to be professional. We're not at that point. We're at a point right now where the clubs are doing a little bit they can. They're not really organized. We've had 3 informal meetings with club members to see where they stand on this. Positive. They're like, wow, it's about time. Curry County's never done this. Reality is Curry County tried this many years ago. So that's not true. We're looking at a different approach with this. Baby steps. Let's try to form this. We want you to get some basic stuff done, but we're not going to expect you, whether you're working or retired, to spend 50, 60 hours a week trying to do a task book, signed off on this stuff. Baby steps. I want you to get the basic stuff that I know that you understand ICS. When we come in here, you guys are the decision makers. You're going to look to us and say, what is going up on the backside of that mountain with that fire right now? You're hearing radio traffic. What is it? That's what you're going to ask for us. We don't want to hear anything else. What is going on so we can make the decisions and get the resources out there to deal with it? So these volunteers bring a lot to the table. I like the fact that the 3 meetings, informal meetings we've had with these groups right now is positive. They're excited. That brings a lot. Coming from the state of Nevada where the governors, I worked for Governor Sandoval, very proactive. Aries race season, very proactive with the state. What do they need? What kind of training? What can we bring to the table to help them out? This is a win-win. I can't say enough about it. I'm very passionate about it, as you can tell. Mr. Boyce there, he knows how passionate I am about this. We have radios right now that the club has purchased, and we have planted them throughout Curry County right now. The college, we put in a ham radio, and we have ham operators at the college. We paid for everything, installations, the radio, the programming, everything. We just put 8 radios at Harbor Fire, a complete radio rack, Marine radio, CB radio, ham radio, fire radio, law enforcement radio, free of charge, that they have a full ECC, Emergency Communication Center at Harbor Fire. You go to Harbor Fire right now, holy smokes. Who put all this in? We did. What it cost the taxpayers? 0. It was all donated.
I would like, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, after you, I was just going to summarize the ordinance that you're looking at to kind of sum it up, but when you're done with the questions.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that when these, the EOC centers come in, that we're part of the negotiation and the language in those, because I think it's important that we're all on the same page with that.
The one meeting that I did have with the city, Lieutenant Donnie Dotson, was basically, your people need to be trained. We need the training, and we keep on hearing this, the basic training to come in here, and we need to make sure that we don't have any bad history following you in that door that could wind up on the internet.
Right. Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you. You referenced, and so did our 2 speakers here, just guidelines and policy for the future, which includes adapting that training, and just so we know what those requirements are. So what would be, assuming we approve this today, what would be our next approach direction to go so that we do have those questions clarified? What happens? I mean, when the highway collapsed, I think you were one of the first ones there, Chair Pash, and so, which was very good, needless to say. But how do we set this up, as you mentioned a minute ago, where we're always going to be when, and we know, as you said, it's coming. So.
Well, and I am working directly with Director Smelser on that policy and crafting that for this board.
Okay.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Council?
Thanks. So just kind of walking you through the ordinance then, and I think it'll answer a lot of the questions. It talks about training. In fact, they have one member of their board will be a training officer, and then it says they will establish bylaws. But essentially the first section, and by the way, we presented to you a revision, and we're going to have a revision or 2 from this that Jeremy and I have talked about. Jeremy came to me with this last week to get it on this agenda as an emergency ordinance. He had a draft. I formatted in our ordinance fashion, but it didn't get all the way done. We put it in as a placeholder. When I got back from my travels, I worked on this Monday and got it to Jeremy, and he has a couple of changes. I'm going to go through what I've got. Jeremy will make the changes he proposes, and then we're going to request adoption of it as an emergency ordinance today. So essentially, and Commissioner Gold, you said, how do all the groups feel about being consolidated into one? That's actually not what we're doing here. We're not consolidating all the groups into one. We're creating a county committee that will basically act as a clearinghouse for all of those groups, but it will also offer, they'll still be their own groups. They'll still own their own equipment. We won't own the equipment. They will still be volunteers, but the CARES organization will train them to certify them to work with our emergency management coordinator in times of emergencies to eliminate any confusion. Yeah, it's almost going from an amateur radio to a professional radio situation. We're still using the word
That's a
amateur.
good way to describe it.
But anyway, yeah, if we could, and so they will do the training through the NIMS and the ICS and those kind of things, but regardless, so we establish the group, we say what their purpose is, it's to supplement and enhance emergency radio capabilities and communications in the county, commonly primarily involved with ham, but can include others. In addition to regularly scheduled meetings, they'll respond as directed in emergencies declared by the county, the state, or feds. And then here's what their powers to do: develop and recommend to the emergency manager coordinator. So essentially, the emergency manager coordinator who serves under the board will be a member by the function of his office. So it's whether it's Jeremy, someone in the future. Our emergency management coordinator will be a member of this 4-person CARES committee. They will develop and recommend plans. They'll develop and recommend, it says technical, it should be technical issues for message format. Again, how do we talk in these things? That's a training. Emergency traffic plan, they're going to work on these plans, establish local communication networks, manage, coordinate training, organization, those kind of things for interested volunteers. So the people who want to participate in this will have to be cleared by this board, this committee that the county's going to appoint before they can officially participate in our emergency work with Jeremy or with our emergency management coordinator. In time of disaster and as directed or in coordination with county emergency management. And then they will work for growth in the program, but also it says report regularly, the last one, to the County Board of Commissioners as directed. So you can request a report from them. Then the membership, 4 members. I'd like you to add, please, if you could, under this section, there should be 4 members of the committee, 3 appointed by the Board of Commissioners. We left out here that 1 each should be from the North, Central, and South County areas of the county, so that all the groups have equal representation on their committee board. And then the term of appointment, I had 4 years. Jeremy recommended a 2-year term of appointment. And then the county emergency manager will be the member and the chair. And then if he ever gets an assistant emergency manager, that person will serve as the chair. And then the 4-member committee then will elect a vice chair who will serve at their meetings in the absence of the committee member. The secretary, Jeremy moved the secretary, that's basically going to be staff, because as a county committee, this will have to be public records and meetings and those kind of things, and therefore it will be staffed by someone from Jeremy's office who will do the notice, the minutes, all those things that we do. Maybe your meetings will be televised as part of our content. You never know. And then the training officer, that's going to be very important. And we say that they will establish, they'll be responsible per the bylaws. So this ordinance is not into the total nitty-gritty. The bylaws is where they are going to develop among themselves whether they want to use an ARES or a CARES model. They'll figure that out amongst themselves and develop their bylaws for training. Terms of office, did you say this was also a 2-year term, Jeremy? Right. Okay. So the appointed committee members will be 2 years, and then we have a non-voting general membership. So the other thing they're going to do in their bylaws is, what do you need to be our non-voting general membership to come to our meetings? Their non-general membership serves at the pleasure of the committee. So the committee members serve at the pleasure of the board, but once that committee is formed, they decide who's going to be their non-voting general membership. And then the general membership, what their function will be is a sounding board for the 4-member committee. When they want to adopt bylaws, change the bylaws, they put them out to the whole committee at large for comments, but ultimately the decision will be of the committee. And then the meetings, they'll be held as a determined, and that's really very basic on the meetings. And then subcommittees, and it just says they can form them, and it says unless authorized by the Curry County Board of Commissioners, the subcommittee shall consist of CARES members. So if the board needs something special, and that's a general rule on subcommittees, a subcommittee is usually formed from the body of the membership of a committee. And what this says is if we're going to ever go outside of that, the Board of Commissioners is going to tell us. And then bylaws amendments shall be adopted majority vote of the full committee, but then review and comments of the members at large. The members at large aren't voting on them, they're just reviewing and comments. And then the committee has to give the members at large 5 days to look at them. So that's this is an ordinance, and then the nitty-gritty will be in their bylaws, and really that's what we're asking the board to adopt today as amended, unless the board has any questions.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair, if I
One
could.
moment. I'll go ahead and make your motion.
Are you ready? Only when you're ready.
Well, I just have some further discussion on it, but go ahead.
You want a motion now? Okay. Mr. Chair, I would ask the board to approve the ordinance establishing a Curry Amateur Radio Emergency Services Committee.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Further
And
dis-
I don't know whether we should have emergency ordinance on that part of the motion.
It was requested by the group that it be an emergency. If not, it requires 2 readings and whatnot. So it's an option of the board.
I'll leave my motion as it is, Mr. Chair.
And as it is, it's submitted as an emergency ordinance.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Further discussion? I have just one question. Are we voting on this as written, or are we voting as an amended copy of this draft? I'd like to see a final draft on this.
Thank you. We can get you a final draft. I can communicate to my assistant, and she can finalize this. So again, in your packet was a placeholder of this ordinance. This draft that has been submitted to you would have a few changes. One, there's a typo on the first page. At the bottom of the second page, we would add that 1 member is from the North, Central, and South County areas. And then at the top of the third page, they serve for 2 years. And then Jeremy had changed, he just moved the location of the secretary to the end of that section of membership because it's just a staff member. Are there any other changes that you're aware of, Jeremy? Okay,
I'd like to propose one.
Yes, sir.
One more change would be in the stagger. Is maybe initially you do a 2, 3, and a 4 year, and that way there you have different expiration times so that your whole board isn't changing at one time. You know, you might in your initial have most of these or half of them are appointed for 2 years, and then some are appointed for 3 and 4, so that you have different expirations.
I think we can say the initial terms will be 1, 2, and 3 years. That will have them each there, and then, okay, we can, and we've done that on other boards and committees, and we can do that, Mr. Chair.
All right, so with those, I have no further questions. Call for question?
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thanks, Andy.
Next, 6C, order to designate county-owned properties as county parklands. This is something that was brought up in our last meeting. This was something that was brought up in our last meeting, and we thought there might have been a potential problem with it, and I don't believe there is, so I'd like to call for make a motion to approve this proposal.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
This is a good day.
6D, request for proposals, 2019-20 audit. Charlene Harvey, Finance Director. Ms. Harvey, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. This is for next year's audit. I wrote one that specifically addresses some needs for the department and defines a specific working relationship with the auditor. Did anyone have questions?
I've actually looked through the proposal, and I didn't really have any problems or questions with it. I do think that we have to have a starting point, and I don't have an issue with it. Commissioner Boyce, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, it looks very good to me, and you put a lot of work into this.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. And
So
you
I
give us
move,
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
You give us plenty of time, too, to put this together and follow very good protocol, in my opinion, Mr. Chair.
Thanks.
I move that we approve the request for proposals for the 2019-20 audit.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Ms. Harvey, while you're still there, if you wouldn't mind, I just had another question on this OpenGov contract. I do have it, what you gave me yesterday, and we need signature on this today. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we will get this taken care of today. I just I wanted to make sure that we were clear. Mr. Curcado called me yesterday, and he hadn't received this yet, and I know we're up against the clock for getting this implemented
We are.
before the end of the year, so I just wanted to make sure while you were here what we needed on this. All we need is board approval on this, which we've already approved, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, then
And
we'll
the
get...
signature for the proposal and the software agreement, the contract.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
thank you.
Yes.
But Sherilyn Harvey, while you're there, Director Harvey, I'm sorry. Would it be okay if I ask a question about OpenGov that's, I think, related to where we are right now?
Sure.
In this proposal, request for proposal. That was the hardest vote I ever made to authorize. It still has my full support. And I could ask you this privately, but just real quick for the public. Wouldn't it be possible to have this OpenGov system, not just be on our 10 or 11 departments, but possibly with schools? And, I mean, is there some way that maybe that's a wild question.
That is
overall.
not a wild question. It's very prudent of you, and it is something that we've had on the table with them, and it is something other communities do. So
I had
we
no idea.
proposed that possibly bringing other municipalities, for example, schools or
Yes, that was my first
cities within the county up under the umbrella and sharing the efficiency of the service with them. And so that's on the table right now. We're just doing one step at a time, and since we don't have any guarantees, I just didn't want to make it a... We're also pursuing funding and an overall development plan, but until I present those to you on the 8th, you know, and under promise and over deliver, right?
And that's something else that I also wanted to communicate to you, Commissioner, was we're actually talked about seeing how many of the special districts we could get on board with the software. It would sure make the coordination and talking with the board, because we are and the assessor's office, all the departments, it would make it a lot easier if everyone had the same software program to coordinate with each other. So.
And the biggest aspect of that was, for me anyway, was the public transparency. The public can get in and look at anything, everything. I think that is, it's tough to justify this cost in some ways, but when you really look at the big picture and the long term, spread out over a reasonable amount of time, the investment, I'm getting more excited about it. So to hear your reply there, your comment,
Yeah, we
very
had,
helpful.
Director Smelser and I had that topic with them, and they're open to it, but they're very strong and minded. They have a very strict business practice for the quality of what they do, and their staff are very high quality individuals, and they don't want to take on more at one time than they can. So they said, let's put it on the table for after the conversion is complete and see where we can go from there.
Another way to pull the county together, too.
Thank you.
All I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Harvey.
All right, next we have 6E, Rogue River Fisheries Restoration.
Do we need a break?
Oh, you know what? Yeah, we do. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 10:25. Thank you for that, Commissioner. One of those down there. Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners. My name's Steve Byerlin. I'm a longtime Rogue River guide, over 30 years, retired, and been working on fisheries since 1970 on the Rogue River. We had with the Commissioners, I guess I would call it the Commissioners Fisheries Summit in Grants Pass in October, and all three of you attended, and all three Josephine County Commissioners attended. Jackson County did not. And out of that meeting, there was direction to put together a package to present to the Corps of Engineers on moving ahead with fisheries restoration on the road. And there was a few items that came up. One of those was sonar counters that wasn't included in my previous plan, which this is just an expansion of, there's over 12,000 words in this document. I know brevity is, something that people like, but when we ask for something, we need to have a reason why we're asking for it, and some background to it. And so this report is full of, there's 66 footnotes citing documents and passages that support every position in here. There's not a position in here other than the sonar counters that is not footnoted and supported. And even the sonar counters, the Corps of Engineers, when they built the Lost Creek project, were just 3 dams, Applegate, Elk Creek, and Lost Creek. When that was authorized, it was authorized under the same document. And so the same rules applied all 3. Applegate we haven't addressed because it's, farther down, and I think it's in pretty good shape. I did go in and look at Elk Creek. Elk Creek, they were going to do mitigation for when the dam was completed. It was never completed. So everything they did within the Elk Creek Basin was never mitigated for. And for over 20 years, fish could not pass freely up Elk Creek. And in 2008, they notched the dam, which was the first time in 20 years allowed fish to go up. And in that time, the numbers of spawning coho declined, the numbers of spawning steelhead drastically declined, and there was over 2,200 steelhead that spawned in Elk Creek that have not ever returned, And it was full of cutthroat trout that were native, but they didn't count those and because they weren't anadromous fish. And there was a study that was 14 years long that was funded by the Corps of Engineers. This is very interesting to me. It's something I found here recently. The 14-year study was the evaluations of the impacts of the dam. And that started right after the dam was constructed, within 5 years of the dam construction. Went 14 years to 1996. And in that 14 years, they found that 47% decline in the production of wild spring snook in the main stem rogue. And they knew that in 1996. To this day, there's not been one project done in the main stem rogue to recover those fish. And we, in this 12,000 pages or words, there is a lot to back up the reasons for why we're concerned and why we want to move ahead. This comes out to, currently I think it's a $274 million project to restore the upper rogue fisheries, which will go, steelhead will benefit, coho will benefit, resident trout will benefit, and spring snook salmon will benefit. In our original proposal, it did not have any money in it for modernization of the hatchery, which is in total failure. And the Corps admitted that it was horrible, at our meeting. The Corps was charged with, whether they do it or not, a engineering study of modernizing the hatchery. And I went back and took the original figures of what it cost to build the hatchery. At the time was $4.4 million. And but money today isn't what it was then. But they have the land, they have the parking lots, they have the boat ramp, they have, quite a thing. And I put a $23 million figure on rebuilding the hatchery and modernizing it. The Corps, I believe, had mentioned about $12 million in repairs to Band-Aid it, So that number of the $23 million that's in there for hatchery modernization is an estimate on my part, and when the Corps comes through with what their estimate would be, then that number would be replaced and it would, change things. This is a living document, the draft, and every time I read it, I see something else, and I've read it 100 times, but I hope it's pretty complete. It'll take some time to read and analyze, but it's split into the first section about why we need to do restoration. Next section is what we do, where we do the restoration. And then the third section is a section on rationalization of expenditure, why we need to spend the money doing those things. And a couple things that are interesting in the program that are new is, and these come from House Document 566, which was the verbiage for authorization that allowed the projects to be built in the first place, and then the EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement for Lost Creek and Elk Creek also. But one of the things that was going to happen when they built the dam, they were supposed to work together. And when Elk Creek was completed, they were going to do a canal and ship water across the valley to be dumped into Little Butte Creek, which is an extremely important spawning stream that is sucked dry water is very poor quality. But dump water into Little Butte Creek and then continue on to Bear Creek and dump water into Bear Creek. And that was in the original proposal, House Document 566. I see no reason why we can't do that, today, and just take stored water from Lost Creek, take it at a canal opening and build a canal across, but that is not necessarily in the cost estimates of what the recovery is, but there may be some money that they can go that way with in there, Lost my train of thought here for a second. Go ahead, and you've got a question.
Just a little chuckle here. You said rationalization. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a little chuckle there when you said rationalization of expenditures. Isn't that another way of saying, did we spend more than what we have? So, did we
ask for more? Why are we asking for that money?
Sure.
And what backs it up? Right now, I believe we're close to $648 million in economic damage in the last 21 years. And that 14-year study that they did shows that the damage started occurring from the day they closed the dam, and I didn't go back that far, And there was certainly years we had big runs of fish where we weren't impacted, and trying to be conservative and not, throwing something out we can't support. The amount of money that we're asking for restitution for the counties for the economic damage is only a quarter of what the economic damage was. And I placed in there that Jackson County wasn't participating in the economic damage for themselves. Have $60 million down for Curry County, and I think $40 million for Josephine County, and then not participating Jackson County. But in each county, I did allow dollars for restitution to businesses that were affected by the economic damage done from the fisheries decline, and and I put that in for Jackson County as well, because their businesses should not be penalized, because Jackson County commissioners don't want to be part of this at this time. They may change their mind once they see where we're at, what we're doing.
We'll keep working on that.
But really where I want to go with this from now, what I'm asking of you is, one is to read this, and if you have time to study it, I think you'll be proud of it. We need to try and get this to Josephine County. I haven't given it to anybody that is in authority. I've sent out half a dozen copies to people for their input and opinions on, what was there, including Tom Satterthwaite, who was the head statistician and biologist for the Rogue that did most of the studies for the Rogue River and the fisheries. So he will give us any scientific supporting data that we need, to support what we have here, And I haven't heard back from him yet. And then one that is kind of interesting is Dave Strahan, who he's looking over it. He's a board member of the Tackle Manufacturers Association for the Northwest, and they're interested possibly in supporting it, but they have to read through it and figure it out. But we've got a lot of big players that may help us in the long run going forward. And what I need from you guys now is for the commission now is to look at this, get a grip on it, and give permission or to forward this to Jackson County so they can do the same. And I did spend an hour on the phone with Dan DeYoung and telling him I was in the middle of this, and that I would get him a copy as soon as, and Josephine County was extremely supportive of the direction we were going.
So have we, I know our next step also from the last meeting that we had there was to plan and schedule a new meeting with the Corps as well as ODF&W to actually get into more of this. Are we also asking to do that now as well?
Yeah, that meeting should be being set up, and I believe Julie Smelter was going to be working on that, And
I think it was, we talked about the third week of January.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yours and forgot mine. Thank you. Yeah, so anyway, so I think we were looking at the third week of January to move forward with that. I'd just like to say, I mean, I don't know of anyone I've ever been around with in my life in this county, since I've been here anyway, that I would trust more with this information. You've done an amazing job with this, and I can tell you've read it 100 times because it started out at 60 words and now it's 12,000.
yeah,
But council's work with this and your work has been amazing, and I'm very, very. I have read through most of this, and very, very pleased with the findings, and I think inevitably the Corps will have to come to the table and deal with us on this. Commissioner Gold?
Two things. I do appreciate your looking at the facts and justifying your asks. And the other thing is, a couple of minutes ago, you said that you were going to send this to Jackson County. Did you mean Josephine County?
I meant Josephine County, and I don't think it's up to me to send it. I think it's up to this commission to decide where it's going to be sent. You know, and that's why I'm here and why I didn't send it to anybody else, you know, is I work for you guys, and this is your decision, whether you accept it, move it forward, or whatever. But this is the draft as of now. I expect to see it change somewhat, you know, but I think the basis is there. And I tried very hard when I first wrote it. It's hard for me to not criticize the Corps of Engineers for, you know, things they've done in the past, but because we're seeking them as a partner, I tried to remove anything in there that was in criticism. And if you see anything that I missed, it was there at one time and I removed it, you know, so, but if you see anything that's there, but this is something that nothing goes into the political channel, it comes out the same, you know, but I think by giving all of the reasons for doing some of the things that we have in here, you know, and giving them backing in statute or, you know, in studies, that gives them position not to have it removed, you know, and I think it's pretty strong, you know, and I tried to do that so people understand, because it's natural in fisheries that everybody thinks that, you know, nobody knows as much about it as they do, you know, and so when you make a statement, you need to have, you know, the information available to back that up, you know.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyce, did you have something else?
Yes, thank you. Go back to Savage Rapids Dam real quick, and I knew you were good friends with Dennis Becklin and the incredible work that he contributed to pull that dam. And remember the old screen that people could actually walk in and see the fish going up through the ladder. And then a document you sent out, probably 2 months ago, but it was related to those two dams being removed and, you know, the touchy part of Lost Creek. So just talk about real quick, and then I have two other small, short questions, but talk real quick about the Savage Rapids Dam removal, your involvement in that, and how this can kind of, because that's in Josephine County, how that can kind of tie us together on this.
I got involved with Savage Rapids Dam 25 years plus ago, you know, and one of the first involvements was going in, and we did a volunteer effort to jackhammer out and rebuild the fish ladder so the fish would have a better chance getting over. Savage Rapids Dam was built with no apron. I mean, it was just straight over and straight down, you know, so the little fish that would come over the dam would fall on basalt boulders and then be eaten by birds and whatnot because they were stunned and whatnot. And it was considered to be the largest, at the time, to removal, the largest fish killer in the United States, you know. And anyhow, it was removed. It hasn't been perfect. The irrigation district has had some problems with the gravel and the screens for diverting water and whatnot, but it's nothing that can't be, you know, addressed or hasn't been being addressed. And when that dam was removed, the estimate was there was going to be 4,000 spring chinook, you know, that wouldn't die, that would, you know, come back, you know, 7,000 more. And the company that removed it did a fabulous job, you know, and they were still on scene, and Jackson County was the owner of Gold Ray, decided to remove Gold Ray, and it was privately owned, so it didn't have to go through a bunch of things the county commissioners decided, and they removed Gold Ray, so that team that was moving Savage Rapids just moved over to Gold Ray and started removing it, and it was something that wasn't expected. It was a fish killer also, but it gave us a counting station on the river so that we knew how many fish were going up and down the river. And the ODFW is kind of, to my chagrin, has been saying that they've increased the number of spring snook in the river by 2,000 fish the last 10 years. Well, to do that, they closed harvest of wild fish, and Savage Rapids was removed. It was supposed to add 4,000. And then Gold Ray was moved, and a smaller dam, Ideal Cement Company dam, was removed at Gold Hill. And so those 4 projects, are including the no harvest, increased the run by 2,000 when Savage Rapids was supposed to increase it by 4,000 by itself. I think we're still in decline. ODFW is in denial, trying to say that what they've done to improve things. But as far as in-stream restoration, very little has been done other than removal of those dams, which when we did the spring salmon conservation plan, we weren't even allowed to consider.
So you just mentioned ODFW. That was my next question. Recent correspondence, connection with them, and support that you could talk about, or?
Yes.
It's been a little quiet, though, hasn't it?
Not really. They haven't said too much, but their demeanor and their support seems to have changed drastically. I spent over an hour on the phone with Ed Bowles, the head of fisheries for ODFW.
That was my next question.
And Ed's a wonderful guy. He was the head of hatcheries in Idaho before he came to Oregon. But Ed was completing my sentences before I finished them, and he knew what he was talking about. And Dan Van Dyke, the biologist on the Upper Rogue, has been quite supportive. He actually wrote a letter of support for our first draft of this project, before we brought it up, and it has not, but a letter of support for it. So I think ODFW support. ODFW can't fight this battle. They, and I think I may have mentioned this before, ODFW has 7 mitigation hatcheries, or the Corps has 7 mitigation hatcheries in the state of Oregon. ODFW is the contractor of producing fish, and I think 6 of those. If the Corps were to kick that contractor out, ODFW, all of the trout production for the state of Oregon is pretty much, or a huge part of it, probably 80%, is in those hatcheries. And so they wouldn't be able to produce those fish. And so I think ODFW is kowtowed by the Corps of Engineers, and the Corps of Engineers has intimidated ODFW to a strong, to a heavy extent. And I backed this up by talking to ex-ODFW employees that are no longer with them. And so the ODFW has a fear of the Corps. But this commission and Josephine County Commission is giving ODFW strength. And they're getting some backbone and standing up. And, and as long as we're not insulting or, going after the Corps too hard, but saying what we need, and I term this as a grassroots effort, because it's coming from the grassroots, to you, to the commissions, to the state, to the feds, and so.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think Ed Bowles is going to be intimidated by anyone, but the work you have done with him, I think, is one of the best directions we could. I mean, it's all risk, but I think bringing him in like you have in the communication is really going to improve the chances of some successes here. One more thing, and that is, you mentioned Tom Satterwade. He's not responded back to you yet?
On this, he has not,
Yeah,
but on the new draft, we were in talks.
So he's probably studying it. Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you.
We were in talks when I was putting this together.
Okay.
All right, so I make a motion that we approve the draft and send it off to Josephine County.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion?
Do you want to, we need to go jointly at some point, I presume, to get it to Jackson County? What's your time frame there? What's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, we can send it to Jackson County and see if they'd reconsider, absolutely. I don't know that we need to go, though we've wasted 2 trips there already. Their board has been, to me anyway, outward, not receptive of it at this point. So I would say right now, if this board would like to, we can send their commission a draft copy of it as well, and maybe it'll change their minds.
You agree?
I think that Jackson County sees this as a legal action, and it's not a legal action, and it may eventually go that way, but now we're working in partnership with the ODFW and the Corps of Engineers, as you know, from that meeting, they agreed to, look at our proposal going forward. And I've heard through the grapevine over here and over there and I haven't sent any information to them, but Senators Wyden and Merkley's offices have an interest in what's going on here, and it's not up to me to inform them, That's up to the commissioners.
Yeah, I brought the original draft copy of this to them last spring, so. Council Huddle?
Thank you. I think Steve Byerland makes a really good point. Jackson County did perceive this as a legal action. I know we've talked about potential there, but it does seem to be more of a policy and a negotiation and a discussion action right now. And maybe if we did send this to them with that clarification, saying, we're not looking at legal action right now. We're looking at you participating in,
Partnership.
Yeah, right, this policy matter. Maybe that would be a way to at least have them reconsider or something. So I don't see any harm. It's kind of like the no harm in asking rule. So.
Right.
Could I make one more comment?
Yes.
I don't think that, I think that probably somebody whispered in their ear and I've heard this around about this being a precursor to removing Lost Creek Dam. And we have no desire to remove Lost Creek Dam, not looking at that in any way, anybody that thinks that. And point number 2, it is not a way to put more hatchery fish in the river. We're not looking to do that either. And when somebody reads through this plan, they will find that probably 80% of it is for wild fish production,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, do you want to add that to your motion or amend your motion to add Jackson County?
Sure. I'll amend my motion that we add Jackson County along with Josephine, the drafts of this restoration project that Mr. Barlin has submitted, and also add a letter, direct staff to add a letter to Jackson County stating that this is not being perceived as a legal action, but to join us in a partnership for policies and correction of some issues with the river and the fisheries.
Very good. I'll second that with amendments, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold,
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce,
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on to 8, which is commissioner updates. I don't like to use this office as a podium for personal, but it is a national issue. I am appalled at the procedure taking place in Washington, D.C. right now, and not on the issue of the president. I'm more appalled at the legal issue of this the hearsay laws that are enacted in our Bill of Rights in our Congress. I'm frustrated that the House of Representatives allowed testimony of hearsay, which is not allowed in any court that I've ever sat in as a visitor and heard testimony. I've never heard a judge comment on that. I would like to thank our staff, as this is our last meeting of the year, for all the hard work they've done. Ms. Schmelzer is wheels off, got a gear that most of us don't even recognize. Our Economic Development Department, our Sheriff's Department being, back up and running, our K-9 program, and we can discuss all this after the first of the year, but I am thrilled to work with this board and get so much off of our table and move forward with so much of what we're getting done. And JJ, thank you for all you do, brother. That's my comments.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad you referenced that, and I was hoping when I mentioned the vote of the impeachment that I wouldn't be out of line at the beginning of our meeting today, but it weighs pretty heavy on my heart and a lot of hearts. It obviously weighs heavy on yours. It's a rough time in our country right now. The United States of America, right down to Curry County, is very divided, and Mr. Barnes spoke earlier today, and the last thing I want to do is offend anyone. But as a public official, you put in the hours and you try and do your best to pull the county together. And hopefully that is some kind of influence or impact on the country in general, our communities, our diversity, all the above. Yeah, it's an interesting time. Whether you support our president or not, it is very political, highly emotional in some of the directions that we see happening, and yeah, it really makes you wonder where we'll be a year from now. So I want the public to know just a couple of things. On the new county, Curry County Courthouse, I've been trying to slow that down a little bit, and I'll tell you why. A good portion of our citizens, they don't understand how we can afford to even look at that right now. I understand the board wants to basically challenge and set up a planning procedure for the future, because we will need a new courthouse someday. But whether it's $8 million or $20 million, people are not taking us seriously, I don't think, when we say we need a new courthouse. A couple of side notes. We spent about $40,000 just in repairs and improvements in the last 5 years. Put a new roof on, I think it was 6 years ago, 5 years ago, a lifetime guarantee. We have new windows that were put in about 7 years ago, and we're having trouble paying the interest on that loan through Oregon Business. And that's been a little bit of an issue, and I know you're aware of that. So in terms of priorities, I just want the public to know that I'm not pushing this, never have. It's not to be indifferent about the long-term planning that we would be responsible to review and to put together. The jail certainly is an issue. Yeah, my dad built that in 1972 with a very good contractor from Brookings, Don Horton, and it was a big improvement for our county, and it is old, but we're going to have to get by. We're going to have to figure out a way to get by until we see what is happening with our finances. And the other thing I really want to mention, I was challenged today on not getting a lot done. I'm not on the defensive, but I'm not going to be associated, with all due respect, with the first 2 years of the amount of money that was squandered within this county. It's close to $500,000, and all of it was on my opposition. So now to, as you just said, the enjoyment you're having working with this board, I feel the same way. I think we're moving pretty fast. We may have to slow down a little bit here. It's been a intense 12 months, and I've pushed as hard as anyone, and I'm not a bit sorry for that, because I see some tremendous progress. But the public, as was witnessed today, a wise reminder, they want to know how we're going to spend, and so, and what we're doing to overcome what we lost those 2 years. Again, I want the public to know, I was in opposition to every dime, so I'm not going to be connected with that, and I have to be vocal on that, and it's well documented. My trip to Washington, D.C., real quick here, DeFazio's office, we have the entire south end of the county, basically anything over the Check River Bridge south. We have a wastewater issue. 4 of our 5 water districts need help, from Langless, Port Orford. Gold Beach is pretty good. Brookings has got a lot of growth, so it's not been a lack of planning on their part. But Harbor is, with the BC fisheries and everything that's going on down in the Brookings Harbor Port, I think that between State Senator Dallas Hurd, certainly State Representative Brock Smith, and Congressman DeFazio's office, the whole harbor plans for the 4th District, especially Florence down to Brookings. It's probably going to be a $10 million project, and so I see that as a huge priority. I think county needs to be very much involved from the beginning on that, and it can do offer some really good work. So I have Congressman DeFazio's ear on that, and certainly the highway funding. As I mentioned, you were the first one, or one of the first ones to the tremendous slide. And, I'm just going to pull that up real quick here. If it's on, if it's not a big deal. But I just want the public to know what the impacts were for Brookings, or just to be reminded, and I think they already know, but just to be reminded how close that was to losing somebody there. It's a miracle that somebody didn't drive off that, what was it, an 8-foot drop on the north end. So we have to push for a long-term repair there, and we are. Just one quick side note with Senator Merkley, the Sudden Oak Death Help, we're starting to gain some traction there. I'm very happy to report with the work that Brock Smith and her did on the 1.7 from the state. That's really opening some doors, and that's been additional motivation for Senator Merkley. Of course, the housing focus, and then the salmon and steelhead recovery. I mean, those are just the 5 of the top issues that I think is the most important for our county. And that's where I'm focusing. There's plenty of other issues that we're all working on, and more on that later. It was a successful trip, but we have a lot of work to do to put those grants together and then find the one-to-one match. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gold.
I'd like to say ditto to a lot of Commissioner Pash's sentiments about working with the people here at the county. I think we have a lot of hardworking employees, and I would like to, on my behalf, wish everybody a very wonderful Christmas, and that's my remarks for the day.
All right, so at this time, we are going to enter into executive session per 192-6602A, consider the employment of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, and 192.6602E, to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. We're going to take a 5-minute recess while we get the executive session set up. And so this meeting is in recess. County Council, that you did an amazing job defending our county the other day, and he was extremely taken back and pleased with your presentation the other day. So we would like to thank you for that. This board is to proceed as directed, as is staff from our executive session. JJ? Pardon?
We have to vote on the higher order.
Oh, that is right. You are correct. Higher order, AFTE, full-time equivalent, decrease facilities. Oh, that's for Terry. So do I have a motion?
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Sorry, Terry, we almost forgot you. Do you have something further? Okay. All right, with that, nothing further. This meeting is adjourned.